Hi guys, and welcome to a create your own brush tutorial. This is my channel, Creatively Me with Bree, and yes, you guessed it, I am Bree. So first let's start off with our canvas size. Let's go into our tools actions button, canvas information, and here is where we can title our work and sign it if you so choose. And then we're going to head on over to dimensions. We're working on 5000 by 5000 pixels at 300 dpi. This provides us with 22 layers to work within. Under our color profile, we'll be going and using the default, which is the second option from the top of the available color palette options. Now we can get started. First, let's head into our brushes. Under calligraphy, there is a brush called Monoline, and make sure that it's selected. Here are the brushes that I will be showing you how to make. So these will not be on your canvas, obviously. First, let's add a new layer. Then we're going over to the selection tool, selecting rectangle, and drawing a rectangle selection. Dragging the color gray over into that space, now we have ourselves a book rectangle. Choosing the selection tool, I just make sure that I have it more centered on the canvas. Now I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to the brush Monoline, which we already have selected, getting the size appropriate, and then I'm creating sort of a little rainbow at the top and filling that space in. I'm also doing this to the bottom. This is not a required step. This is just my preference for how the books look. If there's any parts that you need to adjust, now is the time. So take that eraser and clean up any lines that might be sticking out or bothering you. If you did not do this part, you are not required to make these adjustments. All right, now we are done with our first book. I am going to duplicate this layer, and that is going to be original, so I'm going to hide it from myself, so that way I can't mess it up. Next, I'm going to the transform tool, and I'm putting on my snap and magnets so that I can rotate the book so that it is perfectly horizontal, and I'm going to slide that book down. Now I'm going to duplicate that layer, and I'm going to bring up the book and readjust the size. I have freeform as the selected transform tool so that I can make them different sizes if I so choose, as well as different thickness of the book. So this book is a little bit on the thinner side and a little bit longer than the last book. Now I'm going to make this book a little bit wider and a little bit shorter, but also slightly further to the, what is it, right, left, depends on which way you're looking at it, of the book stack. When you're happy with the way that your books look, now we are going to select them. So start with the one on the bottom and swipe from left to right to select, and then select group. Now those books are all grouped together. I'm going to the second book from the top, going under adjustments, and I'm making it just slightly lighter. I'm looking for color variation so that way when we go to paint them, the books will distinctly be different from one another rather than a blob of the same color gray. While you do want color variation, be sure not to go over the top too much towards white or too much towards black. We want them definitely in the mid-gray range. Duplicate the group by sliding from right to left, and then that duplicated layer I flatten, and then I bring that layer down so that it's next to my other original book design. I'm going to take the group and I'm going to move it horizontal. You can use the snap and magnets to help make it so that it is perfectly vertical now, so the books are no longer horizontal. And I'm going to delete the top layer. There it is. Get rid of that because I only want there to be 4 books total. I'm going to grab 3 and move them. Now that I have these 3, I want to make sure that they sit next to one another appropriately. So I do bring one of the books down, and then I bring the other book up and adjust its height. You can make these however you wish. I take off my snapping and magnets in a moment here just because I don't feel like I'm able to get the shape that I want. I'm still using freeform of the transform tool. And for that last book, that's sort of out on its own little island, I'm going to take that, use the transform tool, going to shift it to be on its side and resize it so that it's leaning on the other books, kind of like a book end. Now I have that, I'm going to swipe right to left and duplicate and then flatten that layer. Now I can get rid of the other layers that are no longer serving for the project. Now I have the beginning of our book brushes. Selecting the singular book, I'm going to press copy. Now we're going to go into our brush library so that I can show you how to make a folder. All the way at the top of your brushes, you'll see that plus sign. Once you select the plus sign, you can now title your work. Yes, I slowed this down so you could see it. Now that I have it titled, you can see that this folder is empty. If I hit the plus sign, that is how you add a brush. So now I'm going into my shape, edit, import, and paste. Now it's pasting the book shape that we initially copied. So this is what our brush looks like. Now we can make some adjustments. Under stroke path, I am going to create spacing. I'm going into properties and making the brush significantly bigger in terms of the brush maximum size. Under Apple Pencil, if you're using Apple Pencil, I take the opacity to none. Okay. Now under Dynamics, I'm going to use Jitter. Jitter helps create books that are varying in size and height. You can skip this step, but I personally prefer it in terms of aesthetic. Now I'm going back to my stroke path and I'm making sure that I like where the spacing is at. It's hard to tell initially, so I do this one more time after I adjust the dynamics. Here I am clearing the drawing pad so that I can show you what it looks like with color. Now we're going into color dynamics. The only one that we'll need to use is the stamp color jitter so that it can change the look of the individual books. For example, if you use the stroke color jitter instead, the entire stack of books get colored rather than the individual books. So I use secondary color and I stay away from hue, but I will show you right now what it does. Hue gives you more variation of color. I have secondary color on now just so that it gives a slight variation. And I mess with the darkness just to get some variation as well. So now we are going to test this brush out by adding a fresh layer and making sure to select a color we like as well as hide any layers we don't need. So now this tells me that the brush appears rather opaque and is rather transparent. So I go in so that I can make some adjustments. First, I'm going into the grain and I'm going down to blend mode. Right now it's on multiply, but I want to put it on height. You can, of course, test out any of these blending modes. This is just my personal preference. And here's what it looks like now that we've tested it out. Okay, so now I click on that layer and I press clear so that we can use that layer for more demonstrations. Next, I'm going to this layer and I'm going to also click and then copy. I'm going to select the plus sign in the brush library and under shape in Brush Studio, shape editor, we are going to import and then paste. As we did before under stroke path, I separate them enough so that I can see that they are no longer touching. Under properties, I increase the maximum size. I go up to the Apple Pencil, take out the opacity so that there is none. Under dynamics, I'm not going to use the jitter like I did with the other brush. Now I'm going into grain, shape. I wasn't sure, but now I am. By selecting Flip X, it's making it so that when you draw, some books will tilt more to one side, and basically it'll flip the brush on a horizontal axis, meaning that the brush will flip back and forth as you use it. So you get a little bit of variation and variety. Heading back into Brush Library, I'm going to swipe right to left and duplicate this brush. Heading back to my layers, I'm going to clear this layer. And now I'm going to select my next book design and I'm going to copy. Back under brushes, I'm going to select the duplicated brush, go to shape, and paste. Now we have a brush where it behaves the same way as the other but has a different brush design within it. And now we have 3 basic brush designs to get us started. I'm just selecting these layers and grouping them together so that I have them in case I need them later. Heading back to our blank layer, I'm now going to grab black, head on over to the selection tool, make sure I'm on rectangle, and draw a rather large rectangle across the canvas. I do, however, miss the bottom, so I fix this easily with just freeform. And now I'm going to add a new layer with a dark charcoal. I'm going to use the selection tool again, use the rectangle, and make the sides of our building bookshelf. All right, so now we're going to duplicate this and slide it over to the other side of the bookshelf. And make sure the other side also lines up mathematically, and then I combine them. Adding a new layer, I go back into my selection, make sure I'm on rectangle, and now I do horizontal rectangles and use those as the shelves. I duplicate and I move them down and space them out as best I can. If I don't feel like I can do it, I just take off the snapping and magnets. I duplicate and move them down as well. Taking off the magnet snapping, and there we go. Look at that. Duplicate one last time, move it down, and now we have our bookshelf. I combine all the layers, and now we have a bookshelf on one layer. Adding a new layer, I am going into the mid-tone gray. I'm grabbing the first brush we made, which is the singular brush that ends up making like a whole line of books, and I drag the brush from one side of the shelf to the other. If I use the transform tool, I can use freeform and squish the books or stretch them or make them taller, shorter, whatever I need in order to fit in the bookshelf the way that I would like. So now we have one shelf already done. Now we're going to grab one of the stacked books, and you can tell the sizing isn't correct and it's a little opaque. All I do is duplicate and combine those layers, and there's my stack. I add a new layer, and now I can do the other kind of book design with the leaning book, and now I can use transform and resize, and there we go. I still feel like these books are a little light, so I do end up duplicating them one final time and combining them. I don't know if you can tell much, but those books are gray, and that stack on layer 6 has sort of a taupe undertone, and so I want to show you how we can correct this or keep it or enhance it. So I take that brush, I take out the secondary color, and then I just keep most of the settings the same. I just increase the darkness. By removing the secondary color, it is no longer influenced by any other color, so it is all gray. See the difference? Neither is wrong. It's just a matter of showing you how you can continue to alter and amend the brushes to the type of project that you're working on. Now I just keep on building up my bookshelf. I use the amended version of the books right here, just so that way everything's in grayscale, so I can show you some ways that we can work around the grayscale to our advantage later. What I love about these brushes is that they make the intricacy of a bookshelf in the background of an art piece incredibly easy to render within only a few minutes. You can, of course, come up with even more book styles than the 3 that I offered. There's a lot of different ways that we can have bookcases look, and this is just an example of a few different types of designs. Adding our final touches. Look, we have a whole bookshelf. Now I'm going to combine all of the bookshelf books, not to the bookshelf, just the books to one another. So now we have the books and we have the bookshelf behind it. Now comes the fun part. I'm going to show you just different ways you can liven this up and color it. So I just added a blank layer. Going back to layer 6, which are where the books are, I'm going to select and go down to reference. Now I'm making sure to select layer 7. I'm grabbing a teal of some kind and I'm showing you that I can just drag and drop onto specific books because it's referencing the layer beneath it. To expedite this process, you can drag and drop and then select continue filling, and it will allow you to continue to just click on whatever books you would like. If you're running into issues with the color drop selecting too many books, it might have something to do with where your threshold is. After you drop a color in, all you have to do is slide right to left to either increase or decrease the threshold. So here's another demonstration of dropping a color in. The colors on the books were too similar, so it grabbed a bunch of them. So without lifting my stylus, I am sliding from right to left to figure out where is the threshold for these books. Now I'm going to show you another way that you can easily color the books on the bookshelf. Selecting layer 6, add a new layer above it, and make that one a clipping mask. Select the reference and deselect reference. Now on the clipping mask, I dragged over the color brown. With the use of blending modes, I can figure out which one looks best for this piece. And I can also adjust the opacity as needed. Once I am done with this step, I do make the layer 6 a reference once again. It doesn't show here, so I wanted to be sure to mention it. Selecting layer 8 with layer 6 as a reference, I'm going to automatic selection, and I'm going to select books throughout the bookshelf. And now it's on the color brown right now, remember? So now that those are selected, we can go into adjustments, and here under hue, I can actually make them different colors if I need to. Here I can adjust the saturation and the brightness as well. Hopefully with the 3 brushes that we've made and the techniques that I've showed you today, you'll be able to make a bookshelf of your choosing as well. Don't be afraid to play around with the brushes and try out some different coloring techniques. There is no wrong way, there's just different ways to approach this. Alright guys, and with that being said, thank you so much for hanging out with me during this tutorial. Your support of my channel means more than I can express. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you haven't already, and I'll see you at the next tutorial. Okay, bye.